Why did you choose Don't Let the Doctor Know as your first directorial experience?
I think, you know, for me, I fell in love with the memoir, and the memoir is what is everything. It's everything. She created these characters that I felt were just so compelling. But again, there was also a lot of parallels to my own experience growing up in South Africa. So that was a Zimbabwean story. Alexandra Fuller's story is Zimbabwean, but the South African story is very, very similar. So when I read this memoir and fell in love with the characters, I just felt I know how to tell this story. I don't know what I was thinking, but I just thought I know how to do this.
How much is a story of privilege, racism, and injustice?
It's all that. So, you know, that was my intention. My recollections as a child, and certainly what she covers in her book as well, is the experience of a child, because I moved to South Africa when I was 8. So it was the experience of being a child and looking at a world that I knew what I was seeing. It was different than what I was being told, but I knew what I was seeing. And so all of the things of, you know, having privilege, being more privileged than the people around you, seeing racist behavior around you, seeing division and separation, you store it all up. And I feel like I've stored it all up inside of me and just needed to get it out and tell the story of it.
The story is beautiful, and also are the locations. I know you shot in South Africa. How important was it for you to show the beauty of the landscape?
You know, that was really important to me. I wanted also, at the same time, I wanted to capture the beauty. I wanted to show those original, the land, you know, the mountains, the skies, the sunsets. But at the same time, I really wanted to also show the anti out of Africa. I wasn't making out of Africa. It wasn't the sweeping steps. It's like, this is the underbelly. There's beauty, but there's decay, and there's something dark about it as well. That was what I was trying to get.
Where did you find Lexi? She's fantastic.
Yeah,
She's very young.
very young. I really did not want an actor, because when I worked with actors, little actors, they just act and they kept acting. And I was just like, we're never going to be able to make this film until I find a child who's not acting. And so we put out a Facebook post, and somebody saw it on Facebook. And then I saw a picture of her and I said, oh my God, her face is great. And then when I worked with her on, you know, in person, I just thought I can get this kid to behave in a way that isn't performative. I can say a line, she says it, and she says it in a natural way. Her face is expressive. And a lot of it was cut and put together because she's little. She was 7, turning 8 at the time that we shot it. So I couldn't give her long passages to learn, but she was very open and receptive. I could have 2 cameras on her at all times, a very close up and a wide, and I could say things off camera and she could do what I was asking her to do, just because she's natural and she's spontaneous.
How satisfied are you by the way the film has been received in several? It opened in Telluride, right? And then you went to Toronto and other festivals.
Yes, I couldn't actually really have scripted the way that the film was received. It was such a tiny budget and such a labor of love and such a specific thing that you're making something. It was also potentially risky for me to take on this angle of things, to show racism, to portray a world that some people might go, well, you know, why do we want to see white people telling the story? But so the reward has been the response to it, which I never could have imagined would be this positive.
And Nicola, your character, she has a tough background. Could you talk a little without giving away anything like that?
Yeah, so I think that, you know, if you're seeing somebody, even certain politicians that I can think of right now, who seem to be awful people, right? One has to believe that even the worst people, there's a thread of something that goes through them that connects to why they've become the way that they are. So for the most part of the movie, you look at Nicola and see her being cold, being hard, behaving in a certain way. And there's one scene where I would hope that we gain some insight into why she is the way that she is. It doesn't excuse her behavior, but it just might give an explanation as to why she became the person that she did.
I guess it has to do with the historical period that she lived. She represented, I mean, the white Rhodesians in a way, right?
Yes, so the white
It's
Rhodesian.
not out of from a, it's not out from a bubble that she's like that.
No, no,
There's
and
an
I think
environment that
the
permitted, right?
white Rhodesians or anyone who's in a position of holding power want to hold on to their power. They're not letting go of it. And I think her, you know, her history with children born on that farm and her history of sort of believing that she'd given everything to fight for it. I think that's why wars are fought. That's why all the wars in the world are happening right now, are because people are deciding, I will hold on to this land at all costs.
I thought the relationship between Sarah and Bobo is very interesting, but also Sarah in a way puts herself in danger, or not really.
She does,
That's
and
what.
that was historically correct in Zimbabwe. Anybody who was Black and lived and worked with a white family were often thought of as collaborators. There were a lot of victims of violence, even in the later part of the war, even as the war came to an end, where people who were attached to white families were victims and were victimized. Sarah, in this instance, also loves this child, so it puts her more so. And that character of Jacob says, you're going to get yourself into trouble because people are watching you and they're seeing you, but she loves the child. So she puts herself in harm's way.
Do you think racism is learned?
I do. I do really. I think that's somewhat what I'm saying, because, and it's why I'm giving her the lines that she speaks, particularly at the beginning of the film, when she says, Africans don't have last names. Mum says don't make friends with the Africans because, you know, any of them could be. So this isn't something, if you put that child, when I show her face with the rooster through the window, at first she gets a fright, but you see in her eyes a longing to connect with those kids. And I just think that she particularly learned a way of thinking through prejudice from things that she heard. Hopefully by the end, she is somewhat disabused of that. But at least at the beginning, we see it's something she's learned.
Did you feel closer to Bobo because you grew up in South Africa? Closer, I mean, or understood her experience, maybe?
Yeah, I read it and I recognized it. I thought, I know this, you know, it's like rounding a corner and almost walking into a mirror is what I felt the memoir was. And that character of Bobo, because Alexandra Fuller describes her young self, her young Bobo, as a kid full of a big heart and with longing to express and share, but also with a lot of power and at times not knowing what is right and what is wrong. And, you know, it's what I felt I was given and put into as a child. So yes, much recognition for who that kid was.
Yeah, I think you also deal with naivete and cruelty in the movie. How did you establish the parallels between those concepts? The sweet naivete of a 7-year-old with the cruelty of things that she learns as
Yes.
part of the Buchanan family.
Yes, so she watches the people around her. So again, this is my idea here is that, you know, we're born and sort of the template is bare and then it's what we're exposed to. So in her innocence, she is open to, she has her way of interpreting Sarah's stories. She has her way of interpreting, but she's watching her parents and she sees particularly the cruelty of the mother. And you then watch her acting out, say, with the children, when she plays with the children. Fetch this, do that. Not like that, you fool. Do this. So she's learned from somebody else speaking that way. And that's where Sarah also reprimands her. And it shows how the child is walking the razor's edge between what she could be, the humane, good part of her, and then a part where she could go into the dark. And we hope by the end that she didn't go that way, that she sort of stayed on the straight and narrow.
So are we going to see you directing more films?
I think so. I loved it. I loved it. I think as long as there's a story that I feel I could tell, I'd have to love the story as much as I loved this one, but I'd love to do it again. I really enjoyed it.
I think this film is necessary because we know so little about 1980s in Rhodesia or Zimbabwe nowadays. And have you been back to where you grew up, and how was the experience? I don't know if you went back. I know you live in the UK, I think.
Yeah, I first of all, I think it's really important because I don't know a lot of films that were made to talk about that specific war, the Zimbabwean War. And I have gone back to South Africa many times, never to the place where I grew up. Interestingly enough, my parents had moved since then. I feel a bit haunted when I go back. I feel many different things pulling me, and feel the pressure of what I would feel as a child. I'm placed back in that. Yeah, it was good to shoot in South Africa because I feel like I put some of those ghosts to rest as well.
Is there guilt?
Sorry? Is there guilt? Is that what you said?
Is there guilt in you? I
For
grew up in
sure.
a society in which
Yes, for sure. And I
yeah.
think that was the impetus and the impulse. If you think, what is the creative impulse? Why did I want to do this? Many people said, why would you put yourself out there with this? And I think the guilt that's within one needed a way out. I needed an outlet. I needed to try to make sense of my existence, my childhood. And I still carry it. I saw things, I witnessed things. And by virtue of the fact that I was white, I was on the easier side of history, not the right side, but an easier side to exist in. So there's definitely guilt, and it comes up and then it goes away again. But somehow making the film has helped me at least to process some of that.
Because you were on the privileged side, and I'm sure it's hurtful now from what you saw as a child.
Yeah, I realized, look, I see it in America too. We are so fortunate by virtue of what you are born into that determines the ease of your life. And it seems so random. It seems so, just it's like a roulette wheel as to who inherits what place and circumstance of birth. And so, yeah, privilege is something that I realize I have by virtue of having been born white. And it's an arbitrary allocation that should decide that, but it does. And I think with it comes a burden and a responsibility to at least try to unpack it and express something with it.